Welcome to the first video, part 1 of 3 for chapter 12. At the beginning of this semester, we broke down language into a few different levels or layers, and we started way down at the level of individual words, and that was chapters 2 and 3, where we were looking at word classes, parts of speech and stuff. And then we went later on to sentence level and then up to discourse level. And we were looking at higher order grammar and structure. Now we're going to dial it back and go back to looking at individual words and how that can affect reading and writing. As far this chapter's a little more philosophical. We're thinking in some kind of broad generalities, but on a practical level, hopefully some of the things we cover in chapter 12 will give you a deeper understanding of why language learning can be so difficult. So, what presents challenges for people who are learning to read, especially those of you who will be teaching elementary level, where literacy and learning how to read is such a huge part of our classes. And then learning how to write and some of the reasons why our students make the mistakes that they do or have the difficulties they do with reading, writing, and also thinking about English language in particular for those of you who end up teaching students whose first language is not English. So how English differs from other languages, some of the peculiar aspects inherent in English itself, and how those might present challenges for your students. So let's get into it. The first thing we're kind of going to look at, something you might not have thought before. I know before I studied linguistics, I never even asked this question of myself. What is a word, right? When we say this is a word, what does that mean? And there are three aspects to this concept of a word. That's the meaning. That's where we usually think of the dictionary definition, but also it can be connotation, because as we all know that some words can have different meanings based on context. And also, some words can be perceived as neutral or positive or negative, right? Just the word itself. It can be considered formal or informal. It can be considered vulgar, right? So words have different meanings. Then there's the pronunciation. And of course, there are sometimes very different regional dialects in the United States. There might be some big differences between here in the South, the deep South, versus even other areas of the South like Texas or Georgia, Virginia. And you go up to the Northeast, the Midwest, the Pacific Northwest, Southern California. Everybody has a different pronunciation of a word, not to mention the various UK and Irish, Australian, and other dialects, right? New Zealand, all of that. So how the word is pronounced, and then how the word is spelled, right? And again, there could be variations in spelling, especially between American English and British English. There are variations. But then there are some words, we're going to talk about homonyms and homophones, words that are spelled the same, may or may not be pronounced the same, and then words that are pronounced the same, but may or may not be spelled the same. So we've got all kinds of variations there. So those are three aspects we can look at. Okay, so if we just look at an example of this word bear, If I say the word bear, the first thing that might pop into your mind is the word B-E-A-R, and you might think like a grizzly bear or a black bear, polar bear. It's an animal, okay? It's a noun. But maybe you think of the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. That's a verb, and it would mean something like to carry or to hold, right? To own, to have. Or another verb, bear with me, meaning be patient, await, tolerate, right? Uh, so some very different meanings. So how should we look at this word bear? If we defined words by their meaning, then we would say, well, we have three different meanings here. So these are three different words. They just happen to be pronounced the same and spelled the same. They're actually three different words. If we defined word by its spelling, then we would say this is one word, B-E-A-R, and this one word has three different meanings. I mean, on a practical level, does it really make a difference to say this is three different words that are spelled the same? Or is it one word with more than one meaning? As far as the dictionary is concerned, dictionaries are based on spelling. So the dictionary would say this is one word with three different meanings. Is that the right way to think about it? And then don't get us even started on words that are not spelled the same, but again, pronounced exactly the same. So bear and bear, if we were basing our definition of word on the pronunciation only, we would say bear is one word that just happens to have two different ways to spell it with more than one meaning. So do we prioritize the spelling, prioritize the pronunciation? Obviously, because we live in a literate society, we've got dictionaries, we usually prioritize spelling. So again, we would say these are two different words that just happen to be pronounced exactly the same. So very, very confusing there. Okay. Think of the word high. Look at these dictionary definitions. This is, again, if we treat this as one word, we would say this is one word with at least 11 definitions with maybe some subsets of definition. So this one word has a lot of different meanings. And again, if we were going by pronunciation, what about the other hi, H-I, which I would say when I greet someone, hi. Again, not the same word, or is it? Okay. So meaning, pronunciation, spelling. Then you've got context, where I could say hi when I'm talking about the Empire State Building. One of those meanings dealt with the height from the ground to the top. If we measured the building, this high would be synonymous with tall. We would say the Empire State Building is about 1,400 feet tall. In this case, high and tall are synonyms. But if I was talking about a person and said he's about 6 feet high, does that mean the same thing as 6 feet tall? And here we find a situation where it's not a synonym, right? A person being 6 feet high would be how the distance from the ground to the position of where that person was, not the measurement from their toes to the top of their head. So even looking at a word in its basic dictionary definition, we can see, depending on context, that meaning can change, right? And it's not quite the same thing. And these are the issues that a lot of ESL students are going to have. If you have ELLs in your class, it's very hard to explain why you can say a building is this so many feet high or tall, but a person, it's different. Okay, so these are the kind of issues you get with people where English is not their first language. Throw the book. It gets more difficult to explain when you've got phrases that can be idiomatic. So throw the book could mean literally tossing the physical object across the room. My son was upset, so he threw the book at me. But if I arrive at court for sentencing and the judge threw the book at him, right? A judge is not literally throwing a book physically at me. This is an idiom. So words can have different meanings, again, depending on context. And these are things that will definitely give an English language learner problems, because they have not heard these idioms and these expressions growing up, right? They've learned English as a second or even third language. Now let's talk about something called lexicon. We all know what a dictionary is. It's a big book. Nowadays, it's all on the web, right? No one uses a book anymore. You've got a dictionary. We all know how a dictionary works. What's a lexicon? Okay, a lexicon is sort of like your own personal mental dictionary. What do you know? What do you associate with when you say you know a word? If I give you a word like reformation and say, do you know what the word reformation means? What mental images or what associations, what meanings do you subscribe to that word? What do you know if you say, yeah, I know that word? So what is inside your head? What is inside your brain? And when we know a language, that knowledge of language, the knowledge of each individual word, includes details about a large number of words. If we could peek inside our brains at the neuron level, right, where we can accurately see how our knowledge is organized, what exactly would we see? How are those neural connections being formed? Okay. Now, if we compare the knowledge of words in our heads with what we find in a dictionary, okay? So we must have something like a dictionary in our heads, right? This is called your mental dictionary. That's your lexicon. Your lexicon is the dictionary you have in your brain. And obviously, all of us are going to have a very unique lexicon. We will share a lot of similarities. We're all English speakers. We've all, had similar experiences in life. So we will have a lot of similarities, but it won't be 100% the same. Okay. The dictionary, Webster's dictionary or the Oxford dictionary, those are going to be very different than what's in our head. Some things in common, yes, but a lot of differences. So again, when you have stored a word in your brain, it's going to be connected with all of those aspects we already talked about. Phonological units, that's how the word is pronounced. Okay. And if you watch a lot of maybe BBC shows, you might know multiple pronunciations for a word. If you grew up in a small rural area and then moved to a larger city, you might be aware of multiple pronunciations of a word. There's the orthographic units. That's the writing, how the word is written, how the word is spelled. Semantic units, that's your definition, your meaning, right? What does the word mean? And again, words can have multiple meanings, and the semantic is always related to context, right? What does the word mean, and how does that meaning change depending on who's speaking it, where are you, what's the situation? So all of these things are all sort of linked together in your brain in some way. If we look at examples, let's just take an example of, say, penguin. If you say the word penguin, you probably have somewhere in your brain a connection to the word bird. Penguins are birds. But we also have some features that we associate with penguin. We know that penguins can swim, but they can't fly. So penguins are connected to canaries because they're both birds, but canaries sing, right? And canaries fly. Penguins don't. So we've kind of have this separation there. Penguins, you probably imagine a black and white, as opposed to a canary, which would be yellow. And then if we had the word shark, well, shark might be connected in your brain to the word fish, and fish is connected to the word animal. Penguin is also connected through the word bird to animal. So, we have in our mind penguins and sharks are both animals, right? So all of these characteristics and all these connections, we can imagine these as like neural connections, right? These are physical connections in your brain that are connecting all of these different meanings. When you hear that word, right, something like bird, do you picture a canary or a penguin or something totally different? What mental image comes to your mind when you hear the word bird, right? And what characteristics do you associate with bird? If I probably said, hey, do birds fly? You would say, yes, birds fly. You have that characteristic of fly connected in your brain to the word bird. But penguins are also birds, and penguins can't fly. So not every bird in reality flies, but the definition that you've assigned to your lexicon probably assigns, right, the characteristic of flight to the word bird. So you can see all these connections, right? This is just a visual representation of what's going on inside your noggin. And the last thing that affects meaning is something that your textbook refers to as attitude. What's the feeling behind this word when we write it or we speak it? Consider the question, how are your classes, versus the singular, how is your class? Besides the fact that I'm asking for plural versus singular, these two questions seem to have the same kind of neutral attitude. I just want to know how your class or your classes, plural, how they're going. How is it? Are you enjoying them? Are you doing well? Okay, it's just a general question. Fairly neutral. If I said, where are the kids? Plural, again, that sounds like a kind of a neutral question. I want to know the location of the children. It sounds like something one parent might say to another. Hey, where are the kids? Oh, the kids are in the backyard. If I make kid singular, where is the kid? Imagine a mother and father talking, and they have an only child. Does it sound strange to you if the mother asks the father, hey, where's the kid? Right? It feels off. I feel as a parent myself, if I was asking for the location of one of my children and I asked my wife, I would just use the child's name, right? Hey, where's Andy? Right? Where's Arthur? I don't think I would use the question, hey, where's the kid? It almost sounds negative that this kid is in trouble in some way. This kid is a nuisance, right? Uh, so we can see just in the difference between singular versus plural, depending on the choice of words, we can change the connotation, we can change the attitude. The feeling is different. I hope that makes sense. In our next video, we're going to focus on writing, specifically spelling in English, which is, oh, so much fun. Join me in the next video, please.